In this video, I'm going to show you some features of the Paint Editor in Scratch 3.0. The Paint Editor is available in the Project Editor in Scratch. And to see the Paint Editor, you usually have a sprite selected. So I have a sprite here, and I'm going to go to Costumes. Right now, this is showing the cat in the Vector mode. And I'm going to show you the tools in the Vector mode and then switch to Bitmap and talk briefly about the differences between them. When you have the cat, you have several tools available on the left. The arrow tool is a select. You can select the cat or any object on this screen with the cat if you had drawn any. When I select the cat by making a rectangle around him, you can see he's actually composed of many different parts. And this is part of the Vector mode that makes it kind of powerful to edit a sprite and make animations of a sprite. If you look on the far left, you'll see that this sprite has two costumes. And this is used to make a simple animation where it looks like the cat is walking. The next tool is the Reshape tool. You can use this tool to click on any line in a sprite and then either pull out or push in the line to reshape. We have a brush tool, and the brush can be thin or thick. We have an eraser tool to erase things, a paint bucket, which is your fill tool, a text tool, and then a line, circle, and rectangle tool to make different shapes. If you hold the shift when you use these tools, then the line tool will be exactly vertical or horizontal. The circle will be a circle, and the rectangle will be a square. Along the top, there are fill options and color options for the outline and for fill, and these don't show available unless you have one of the tools that needs these. The color changer is a bit different in Scratch 3.0, and we'll use that in a little bit. You have some sliders that you do to get the color that you want. Across the top, we have the undo and the redo. We have group and ungroup, which aren't active right now because you would have to have something selected to do something with those. Just a second, and I will go back to my paint tool, my pointer tool, and select the cat again. It's easy to forget if you're on a certain tool, but if you accidentally paint on something, you can just use your undo to get rid of it. So now these things are showing because I could ungroup the cat, make it easy to take him apart. I can move parts of him forward or backwards, or all the way to the front or all the way to the back. I can copy the cat and paste it, delete it, and I can flip horizontal or vertical. These front and back mean more if you have another object. Like if I drew something on the cat and I wanted it behind him, then I could send that object to the back. So this is a quick tour in Vector mode. Also, at the bottom, you have your zoom in and zoom out, which can be very helpful if you're making changes to a very small part of a sprite. Now I'm going to convert to Bitmap. Bitmap is a little different. You notice there's some little jaggies around the edge here. And if I select the cat, he's one object. And if I try to resize him, he gets even jaggier. And if I would convert back to Vector and select him again, he's been kind of flattened into one object, and he's not a group of objects. I'm going to get rid of this sprite and put him back in again. I do that by going over here where it says choose a sprite. I'm going to go to the choose a sprite option that's in Scratch. If I had selected the paintbrush, then it would let me just go ahead and paint a sprite right now on the screen, on the paint editor. But I'm going to choose the cat. And since I know I want the cat, I'm going to type it in my search window. I could go to animals, I could search all, they're alphabetically arranged, but I'm going to put in cat, and I get some choices here, and I'm going to pick the scratch cat, number 1 choice. So now I'm going to go back to costumes, and I'm going to do some mild editing of this cat. I'm going to change his fur color. So I'm going to click on the fill bucket and pick a color. And this probably isn't a color you'd find on a cat, but I'm going to do kind of like a light blue. And I could slide around. I can pick on the different options here. I'm going to do a light blue. And then I usually just click off to get rid of that color palette. And I can come over here and change everything that was orange to blue. So it's doing it bit by bit. Now let's say I wanted to edit him a little bit more. Maybe I want to draw a eyebrows on him. So I'm going to use the brush tool. I'm going to pick a color for the brush tool. Oops, let's see, first I want to change the tan. I don't want a really thick brush. I'm going to use a 5 here. And I'm going to use the fill color for the brush and pick like a blackish color. And I'm going to click off the palette, and I'm going to draw a couple of eyebrows on him. Now, if you look over at the costumes, you'll notice that only one of the cats changed. The one whose costume I was on, the default is number 1. So if I'm going to do an animation and I want all the cats to look the same, then I'm going to come down and click on cat B. And this time I'll go ahead and do the fill color first for the cat. I would kind of recommend that once you've found a color that you like, that you use the eyedropper to select it, or you would change all the costumes at once. So I'm going to go back to Cap A. I've got the fill option here. I'm going to click on the fill, click on the eyedropper, and then I'm going to come over here and click right in the middle of this leg, and it's selected the color that I want. Now I can click off of the palette, and then I can come back to cat B, and I can fill in his fur. Doing it one piece at a time. And then I can go to the brush and select my color, my fill color for the brush. And draw his eyebrows. Now, since this cat has 2 different animations, I'm going to go back through both of them. We've got this one where his leg is extended, and we've got this one where he's kind of in a backwards motion. I'm going to duplicate him and just change him a little bit, just so you can see how you can do that in the paint editor. So I'm going to right click on cat 2 and pick duplicate. I'm going to make sure I get rid of the paintbrush and get the pointer tool. I'm going to click on a leg, left click on his leg, and just use the rotate to make a slight change here in this one. And now I'll do the same thing with the other leg. Just rotate and make a slight change. And then click off of that. So now we've got cat extended, cat kind of back, and then the cat. Now that one looks pretty much the same as cat number 2. So sometimes you have to kind of work it a little bit. There's a little bit of difference there. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it, but you could go and tweak that. Now that I've done all of that, I can animate the cat. So I'm going to use a control block. We'll do more with animation later, but this is just kind of like a little preview. And actually I want to use an event block, I think, because I want to say when this sprite clicked. I could use other events, or I could just put in the code and click it to make it happen too. And then I'm going to use a control block, because I'm going to have him repeat his actions 10 times. I do want him to move. I don't just want the legs to move and the cat to stay still. So I'm going to go to motion and get a motion block. I'll have him move 10 steps. And I'm going to go to the looks blocks, and I'm going to pick the next costume. I could have it switch costume by costume, but for this, the next costume is what I want. And then I'm going to add another control, because I want a little bit of wait time in there. Otherwise, he's going to move so fast, you're not going to really notice it. So then I'm going to put in a wait. 1 second's a lot. So I'm going to change the 1 second to 0.5. And then I'll click my little guy. And there he is doing his little 3-step. I'm going to move him back. And each time I click, he's going to do that. So if I wanted to disable that while I move him, I could just stretch my blocks out, put him back. And then I can put my code together when I want. I could also add more repeats in if I wanted to. I'll put in 20. Okay, now let's say we want to do our own background. We want to draw a background or a backdrop. So I would come over to the right, same area kind of where I got a sprite, and I could choose a backdrop that came with the program, or I can draw my own. And I'm going to draw my own or paint my own. I usually start my background, if I'm doing like the grass and the sky, I would start it in Vector, but then to fill in the sky, I would flip to Bitmap. It's harder to fill in areas with Vector mode than it is with Bitmap mode. So first I'm going to make a lawn across the bottom. I'm going to get a green color. Using this slider takes a little bit of practice. But I like that. Now since I picked a rectangle, it's giving me the option for an outline color. I could choose green again, or I could just change this to 0, and there's no outline. So now I still have my rectangle. I'm not going to hold my shift because I want to make a rectangle along the bottom. And there's my ground. If I want it to look a little more natural, I can use the reshape tool. Click on reshape, and then wherever I click, it's going to put in little points, and I can manipulate the points if I want to. And I can click to put in more points wherever I want to in here. And now I'm going to convert to Bitmap. and use the color tool to fill the sky color. Let's see, I want a blue. And then click, and it fills in blue. So now I've got my sky. The cat almost matches that, so I could change the color if I wanted to at any point. And then let's say I want to add a house. I would use my rectangle tool and give it a different fill color probably. Give it kind of a dark brown. Let's see. Give it kind of a brown color. And my choices are filled or outline here too, but I want it filled. So I'm going to make my rectangle for my house. And I could do the same for the door and just change it and make it a different color. I can also resize it if I think that looks a little small compared to the cat. So I can resize it. And I can change the fill color and put in a door. But one thing I want to do before I do that is just kind of click so that nothing is selected here in my picture.